From AccuWeather.com, this is AccuWeather Daily, a brief host-read article. It's weather news in a nutshell. Well, AccuWeather's hurricane season forecast is out, and there are several things to know before the first tropical storm spins up in the Atlantic or the Gulf. First, a developing El Niño will be one of the biggest forces shaping the upcoming Atlantic hurricane season, and is one reason the number of storms could be near to below historical averages. Two, even with a lesser number of hurricanes predicted, hurricane preparedness is critical, as multiple storms could make landfall in the U.S. this season. Now, the 2025 hurricane season was close to the historical average in terms of the number of storms, but it featured 3 Category 5 hurricanes, just one shy of the all-time record of 4. Additionally, most of the tropical activity occurred after September 10th, the climatological peak of the hurricane season. AccuWeather lead hurricane expert Alex De Silva says that it is very important that everybody from South Texas all the way to Maine prepares equally for each and every hurricane season, regardless of what the official forecast is. Even if it's expected to be slightly below average, we can still see major hits across the U.S. The Atlantic hurricane season officially begins on Monday, June 1st, and it will be shaped by a shifting climate pattern in the Pacific. El Niño occurs when ocean temperatures near the equator of the eastern Pacific Ocean warm to at least a half of a degree Celsius above the long-term averages. The warmer the water in this area of the Pacific, the greater the effect it will have on tropical activity worldwide. Now, typically, El Niño creates stronger upper-level winds, also known as wind shear, across the Atlantic, which does make it harder for tropical storms to actually take shape. With El Niño forecast to develop and strengthen throughout the summer and autumn, it is likely to translate to fewer storms during the second half of the hurricane season compared to the first half. There is about a 15% chance that a super El Niño will develop if ocean temperatures near the equator of the eastern Pacific rise at least 2 degrees Celsius above long-term averages. Now, if that happens, it could sharply reduce storm activity in late October and November. The last time there was an El Niño during the Atlantic hurricane season was 2023, which was busier than normal with 20 named storms above the historical average of 14. De Silva said that what made 2023 very special is it was also the warmest year on record if we take a look at the average sea surface temperatures across the Atlantic basin. Waters across the Atlantic are expected to be warm throughout the year, though not as high as in 2023. So, AccuWeather is predicting 11 to 16 named storms, including 4 to 7 hurricanes and 2 to 4 major hurricanes, which are Category 3 or higher. Forecasters also expect 3 to 5 direct impacts on the U.S. throughout the Atlantic hurricane season coming up. Now, for comparison, the historical average is 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. A direct impact to land can occur even if a storm doesn't make landfall. It can also include tropical storm force winds reaching land, flooding rain from a storm just offshore, or a storm surge of at least 2 feet along the coast. Hurricane Erin is a prime example of a high-impact storm that did not make landfall. In August of last year, pounding waves and storm surge from the hurricane caused severe beach erosion along the Atlantic seaboard. So by the end of the season, multiple houses had collapsed into the ocean following Erin and other coastal storms. Although AccuWeather is predicting a near to below average number of tropical storms and hurricanes this year, 2026 could still be fairly active compared to other El Niño years. Since the start of the satellite era in the 1960s, El Niño years have averaged about 10 named storms and 5 hurricanes. Now, that is well below the historical average during La Niña years, which typically produce around 15 named storms and 8 hurricanes. In years when neither El Niño nor La Niña is present, the average is 13 named storms and 7 hurricanes. Even with numbers near or below historical averages, the season can still turn destructive. Just take the 1992 hurricane season as an example, as there were only 7 named storms that year. But the season is infamous due to Hurricane Andrew, one of the most powerful hurricanes to ever strike the U.S. Here's the thing, though. As De Silva points out, this year AccuWeather forecasters are very concerned about rapid intensification. Very similar to the last couple of years, the risk of fast strengthening storms and hurricanes is tied to the abundance of warm water, which serves as the fuel for storms. The concern is not just warm water at the ocean surface, though. The warm water also extends deeper below the surface, known as ocean heat content. De Silva said those waters are also exceptionally warm. And not only are those waters warm, but that warm water is hundreds of feet deep across most of the hurricane basin. The areas of the U.S. at the greatest risk of direct impact from a tropical storm or a hurricane this season are the northern and northeastern Gulf Coast and the Carolinas. To make the landfall risk forecast, AccuWeather forecasters looked back at past years with weather patterns similar to what is expected this season. In, let's say, 2009, 2014, 2018, and 2023, tropical storms and hurricanes brought more impacts to those areas than to other parts of the Gulf and Atlantic coasts. The risk of significant tropical impacts is lower along the Texas coast, but that doesn't mean that the state is in the clear. In 2023, one of the only storms to make landfall in the U.S. was Tropical Storm Harold, which impacted southern Texas. Forecasters are also keeping a close eye on the weeks before and just after the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season on June 1st. With warm waters firmly in place in the areas where storms typically develop early in the season, it may not take much to have tropical activity fire up around the same time that the season officially gets underway. The early part of the hurricane season is when homegrown development is most frequent. This can happen if a storm or front that moves across North America stalls over the Gulf, the Western Caribbean, or Western Atlantic. As it sits over that warm water, it may eventually transform into a tropical depression, a tropical storm, or even a hurricane. When storms develop so close to land, it means there is less time for coastal residents to prepare for potential impacts. El Niño will not be the only influence on tropical storms and hurricanes, though. Another factor is the position of the Bermuda High. De Silva said it may sit a bit farther south and east again this year, similar to last season. That setup can allow more storms to curve away from the U.S., especially in the western Atlantic. Forecasters are also watching for periods of dry Saharan dust and changes in the flow of tropical waves coming off Africa. Those factors could, at times, slow development in the main area where storms usually form across the Atlantic. So, the takeaways from this hurricane season's forecast are: 1. El Niño is expected to develop and strengthen, which should help keep the season near to below the historical average. 2. The forecast calls for 11 to 16 named storms, including 4 to 7 hurricanes and 2 to 4 major hurricanes. 3. It only takes one storm. Quiet seasons can still produce historic disasters, again taking 1992 and Hurricane Andrew as an example. 4. The northern and northeastern Gulf Coast and the Carolinas face the highest threat of direct impacts. And 5. Very warm Atlantic water could still allow storms to intensify quickly, including before the season officially kicks off on June 1st. That's all for now. You can find more regional forecasts and science-based articles at AccuWeather.com. And for your local forecast at your fingertips, download the AccuWeather app. Enjoy the rest of your day, be safe, and I'll be back tomorrow with more from AccuWeather.